You're listening to the Study Podcast with Dr. Paul Wegner. I'm your host, Tyler Sanders, and I'm here with Dr. Paul Wegner, who's going to give us the Hebrew words of the day for sure in this episode as we're talking about the book of Hosea.
Yes, I'm afraid this time it's actually got quite a few of them too. So, all right, so let's look at them. In the first one are these plurals here. I don't know if you can tell, but those red circles are plurals.
Yeah, with an eem, right?
Yeah, and this is a woman of harlotry, and she's going to have children of harlotry. Okay, but it's harlotries. It's plural, both of them. And usually in Hebrew, when it's plural, it can be for intensification. And I think that's what this is getting at. Because normally you would just have it be the singular, but because it's intensifying it, I believe the plurals are for that reason.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, this is well, and then the next thing. So that's the first thing I wanted to show you. The second thing is when you have an infinitive before a main verb, and that infinitive has the same root radicals, it's for intensification. Okay. So we've got a good example here. For, and then now it's got the land of Israel. It's meaning, so for the land has committed flagrant, that's how this translates, has committed terrible harlotry against the Lord. Yeah. So it's interesting when you have this kind of a structure, it's really for emphasis to tell you just how bad it is.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Now, when it's saying the land, is that really referring more to like the people, or is this talking about just the entire nation or something?
Yeah, it's a little of both. Because what happens is even the people seem to affect the land. And so even the land is incorporated into this because they're committing the flagrant idolatry right on the land itself. And so it's interesting how in the Hebrew mind they mix that kind of.
Yeah.
Now here's a bad thing. He tells God tells him to go get a woman of harlotry and have children of harlotry. He seems to know exactly who to go to. He goes to Gomer. And I'm going, oh, that's kind of embarrassing. So I don't know if that was intentional, if it's intending to, that there was already a person that was a flagrant harlot that they could go after, or if it was just, he just went out and got her. But it makes it sound like he knew who to go get and he went and got her.
Yeah, right.
So anyway, okay. Now the next ones are interesting because the names fit the structure real well. So the Lord's going to have him to call his first child Jezreel. And the word Jezreel means to sow or scatter. But it says for the reason, for a little while, and I will punish the house of Jehu for the blood shed at Jezreel. So, and then later it talks about the bow. He's going to break the bow in the valley of Jezreel. So it's actually talking about a place. And Jehu in 2 Kings, it talks about Jehu killing Jeroboam, the person right ahead, the king ahead of him. What's interesting is at that point, it doesn't say anything about how bad it is. But now when you get here, he's being punished for that flagrant, him going after, and it was so. He killed off everybody that was connected with the king ahead of him. And so it just sounds like he went overboard. And as you look at the passage, it certainly looks like he did. And so I think now he's being punished for that, even though initially you wouldn't even have known that God was upset with him doing that.
Right.
So that one's interesting. And then the next one is he's going to have him call his not the next son, the one after that, the third one. He's going to call him Lo Ami, which means not my people. And and then it says, because Israel are not my people and I am not their God. So it plays on words that are kind of interesting, but the names are signifying what God's got, the message that God's getting across.
Right.
So I thought that's kind of fun. So you got two kind of fun things. Here's names that picture what God's referring to, and then the intensification in this one.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and it's a good setup for the rest of the book. I mean, this is all stuff that happens in the first couple of verses.
That's right.
That really is a good, that tees us up for what we're about to talk about.
Yeah, in fact, let's go ahead and look at it. So it's the book of Hosea. And remember, we talked about when we were going to do these, we're going to try to do them in at least the close to as order as possible, so that when you think back,
chronological order, right?
Yeah. So when you think back when they occurred, when we went on the podcast, you'll kind of have some idea when they occur in history.
Yeah.
So this one is about 760 to 722. The reason down to 722 is because that's when the Northern Kingdom's taken off into captivity. Mm-hmm. So more than likely it's not after that. And then it's mainly directed towards the Northern Kingdom, because by that time, God was pretty clear that they've disobeyed and you heard it, committing flagrant idolatry against the Lord.
Yeah.
Okay. The purpose is to impress upon the people of Israel the love which Yahweh had for them. This book is interesting because it's got an illustration. The first 3 chapters are like an illustration, and then the rest of it explains what that illustration is all about. So it's in my mind, it's a really good way. Now, and plus, you've got God's. And I actually, some people have questioned whether she was a harlot before Hosea had her or after, maybe she was afterwards. But in actual fact, it seems like to me it makes more sense, because the whole purpose of this is to catch their attention and to say, this is what you guys are doing against me. Yeah. And so to have one of his prophets going and taking a harlot as a wife had to be scandalous, basically. And so I think that's probably the whole purpose, was to grab their attention and say, hey, if you don't listen, you're going to be judged, and you've got to listen now, because this is what you're doing. So sometimes the prophets are told to do like Isaiah is supposed to walk naked before the people, and then say that one of these days you guys are going to be taken into exile. And so it's to catch them off guard, to hopefully grab their attention and make them think about what they're doing. So so the prophets didn't always have such great things to do, but no, they were God's spokesman, and they were there to make sure that they got their attention often.
And the message was communicated.
Okay, so I've got a key verse is Hosea 14, 1 through 2, and it talks about returning back, O Israel, to the Lord. So it's the idea of turning back to him. So you can see the division here. You've got an introduction, but then the rest of the 2 and 3, chapter 1, 2, and 3 are basically this illustration. Then basically the rest of it, so 4 through 14, are basically an explanation of what the image was there at the beginning. And the whole key is to return to the Lord. So so you can see it's and it ends in a really interesting way. It talks about letting the wise person understand. So it almost lets you know that this is almost like more than an illustration, almost like a parable, almost, of what Hosea is doing, then its explanation, and then saying, okay, now you who are wise will get this. And so it's the idea of hopefully catching their attention and saying, oh, we got to stop this because we're disobeying God. So it's kind of neat. That's how the book is structured. All right, let's go into it. Introduction. You've got first. It's the book of. It's the first book of the Book of the 12. It's called the Book of the 12 are the 12 minor prophets. And so sometimes you have, you sometimes hear the Book of the 12, and that just means it's those minor prophets that we're talking about. Okay.
Right.
And I assume the first one is to try to get you into it. In actual fact, remember I told you Hosea is one of the earlier ones too. So maybe that's another reason why it's out there. It's directed towards the Northern Kingdom, who is sometimes called, Ephraim is another name for it. And that's because the major tribe that was up north was the Ephraim tribe of Ephraim, and that was basically the main center of the land of Israel. So I think that's why a lot of times it just becomes like Hosea 5:3 says, I know Ephraim, and Israel's not hidden from me. For now, O Ephraim, you have played the harlot. Israel has defiled itself. So you can see it's real clear that Ephraim and Israel are basically the same term,
Right.
you know. So it's using that to show you. But I think it's because it's a major tribe in that hill country area.
Right.
Hosea probably means Yahweh has delivered. And so even the name, suggests that. The book is roughly in chronological order, and I think that's probably important because the structure of him going to the harlot, and then him having her leaving, then him taking her back and stuff. That structure and order is going to be important. So I think that's probably why we've got it structured the way it is. Little is known about Hosea. His father's name is Beri, but that's right in the first line. It's very possible he comes from the northern kingdom because he's got a lot of things up north that he mentions. Like he mentions Gilead or Mount Tabor or Shechem or Gilgal and Bethel. All those would be places in the north. And so my guess is it's pretty clear he's from that area. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So at least I think it's true. All right. The first verse actually gives you some help on to know when it's happening. So it's between the times in Judah, Uzziah to Hezekiah, and in Israel, the northern kingdom is Jeroboam II. But remember, Jeroboam II has a really long time frame. So that's why it covers so many of the kings of Judah. But my guess is it's more in Jeroboam II's time, and that these others are it probably does keep going down, but that's the most crucial time. It's also interesting. It even has Hezekiah's name in there, and in Hezekiah's time, the northern kingdom's already in exile. So when I told you it was primarily to Israel, that the northern kingdom, that still there's going to be some of the southern kingdom that's important too. Yeah. So they're doing pretty much the same thing. I thought also Hosea 8 gives us a good picture in verses 8 through 10 of kind of what's going on. Israel's swallowed up, but they are now among the nations like a vessel which no one delights. So basically what's happening is Israel is getting influenced so much by these other countries that it's like a vessel no one wants. Okay. And it says they've gone up to Assyria like a wild donkey all alone. Ephraim has hired lovers. So the real problem with that is that Israel went to Assyria for help instead of going to their own God.
Right.
So that's So, and then verse 10 says, even though they hired allies among the nations, now I will gather them up, and they will begin to diminish because of the burden of the kings of the princesses. So he's saying it's not going to help you at all, that you've gone after these other ones. If only you'd come to me, we could have gotten this worked out. So it's interesting. Okay. Historically, Jeroboam II's reign was very prosperous for the Israelites. Their borders were expanded to the largest they had been up to that point. And their prosperity brought with it the desire to go after other gods, and even a worse situation for the poor people. So that's why so Baalism and stuff like that came in, but also the rich people were ripping off the poor even more than they were before. Right. So that's part of the reason God's going to punish them. All right, here we get into chapter 1, and we've got these 3 children that Hosea's wife has. Okay, so it said to go get a wife of harlotries. Okay, and she's going to have Jezreel, Lo-Ruhamah, and Lo-Ami. So Jezreel means God scatters. We talked about that. Lo-Ruhamah means no compassion, because God's not going to have compassion on them. And then Lo-Ami means not my people. So here we've got a picture of God. Remember, if it wasn't good enough to have this harlot that Hosea's got to marry, now he's going to have children that their names are a message to them. Now, look at, I don't know if you've got your Bible there, but at verse 10, it actually switches. So without any warning, so I'm going to read verse 9 and then watch verse 10. Verse 9 says, and the Lord said, name him Lo Ami, for you are not my people, and I am not your God. Verse 10, yet the number of the sons of Israel will be like the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured or numbered. And in the place where it is said to them, you are not my people, it will be said to them, you are the sons of the living God. And the sons of Judah and the sons of Israel will be gathered together, and they will appoint for themselves one leader, and they will go up to the land, for great will be the day of Jezreel. And then the next verse, say to your brothers, Ami, and your sisters, Ruama, contend with, and that means my people and compassion.
Yeah.
So you get up to chapter 2, verse 1, and the situation is just reversed. It's switched everything. And without any hint that was going to happen, but it's those names that can tell you the switch that happens.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, so the big picture is God wants them to know they're going to be punished and they deserve the punishment, but He's not going to let them go, and that becomes important.
Yeah.
So, okay, does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
All right. In verse in Hosea 1, where here it says, the Lord spoke through Hosea, the Lord to Hosea, go take for yourself a wife of harlotries, plural really, have children of harlotries, for the land commits flagrant harlotry, forsaking the Lord. So he went and took Gomer, the daughter of Diblaim, and she conceived and bore him a son. See, so notice that, remember I told you it makes it sound like he knows who to go to? From the biblical text, it almost sounds like he knew just who to go to find his wife.
Right.
Okay, so here's the first one. So name him Jezreel, for in a little while you will punish the house of Jehu for the bloodshed of Jezreel. So the valley of Jezreel is it's a wide valley and very productive today in Israel. It's called the breadbasket of Israel today. And then there's also a city called Jezreel. So Jezreel sits up on this higher mountain, and the valley is below it. And that's the place where Ahab has his summer palace. Remember we talked about that last time?
Yeah, right.
So here's Jezreel that's got this summer palace there. And he says that this is they're going to be, I assume it means that initially they're going to be scattered. But then probably the second time it's used, it probably means to sow, because because it says there's going to be so many of them. Remember that? So my guess, it's like, a play on words. Yeah. So if you want to see the history of that, you can go to 2 Kings 9. That's where the history of Jehu and Ahab is.
Okay.
All right. And then the second child is in verse 6. Then she conceived again and gave birth to a daughter. And the Lord said, name her Lo Ruama, for I will no longer have compassion on the house of Israel, that I would ever forgive her. But I will have compassion on the house of Judah and deliver them by the Lord their God. And I will not deliver them by bow, sword, battle horses, or horsemen. So I assume it means he's going to do it by his own power. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Then we got one more child, verses 8 and 9. And she, when she had weaned Lo Ruama, she conceived and gave birth to a son. And the Lord said, name him Lo Ami, for you are not my people, and I am not your God. So we've got this. This prophecy starts, or the prophet starts with this illustration, with Hosea having to go marry a harlot, and then having these three children, and each one of the children have a name that says something to Israel. And then we've already talked about this, but the next verse then switches it, and now it's going to be very positive. Okay. Yeah. I put on here, what happened? And I think the answer is God's going to do the work. Remember, he told about one of the children that he wasn't going to be delivered by battle horse or any of those things, but probably by his own hand. So
yeah.
So that's kind of how it starts, and so it kind of then that's the opening for the rest of the book.
Mm-hmm.
Chapter 2 is kind of an interesting one too, because now it starts to explain why this picture is so clear to the nation of Israel, or should be. It's talking about how Yahweh has this legal dispute with the nation of Israel, and that she's been unfaithful, just like a harlot was. She's going after Yahweh, or I'm sorry, they went after Baal and in her harlotry, and then at verse 14, everything changes, and it talks about them returning to God and Him blessing them. So so that second part there is a major shift in the book.
Yeah.
Here's what it says. Contend with your mother, contend, for she is not my wife and I am not her husband. And let her put away her harlotry from her face and her adultery from between her breasts, or I will strip her naked and expose her on the day when she was born. I will make her like a wilderness, like a desert land, and slay with thirst. Also, I have no compassion for her children, because they are children of harlotry, for their mother has played the harlot, and who has conceived them has acted shamefully. For she said, I will go after my lovers, who gave me my bread and my water, my wool and my flax, my oil and my drink. Therefore, behold, I will hedge her up with thorns, and I will build a wall against her, so that she cannot find her path. Wow. It gets so bad. Hosea, or Israel thinks that it's these other gods. You remember, Baal was the god who was supposed to bring rain and stuff like that, the fertility god. And so the more God blesses them, the more they're using their things, the blessings that God gives them, for their to go after other gods. And so he's in a no-win situation. So only God can make this one work.
Yeah.
All right. What's interesting is in Isaiah chapter 50, it says, Thus says the Lord, where is the certificate of divorce by which I have sent your mother away? Or to whom of my creditors did I sell you? Behold, you were sold for your iniquities, and for your transgressions your mother was sent away. This verse makes it sound like God never did divorce her, because there was no certificate of divorce. At least that's what it makes it sound like. But she wandered away from God. So God didn't sell her. So it wasn't a problem on God's side. It was more a problem on Israel's side. But what's interesting here is that this terminology here, let me go back for just a minute. This terminology here, for she is not my wife and I am not her husband, that almost makes it sound like divorce, because in the ancient Near East, you just had to say it, and that was usually true. But then and that would probably have been true in all the other ancient Near Eastern countries. But in Israel, there was supposed to be this certificate of divorce. So even though God says, you're not acting like my wife, and you're not, and I'm not going to act like your husband, He hasn't still divorced her yet. And at least that's how I understand this Isaiah 50 passage. Because it makes it sound like there was no certificate of divorce. So He didn't do that, but He certainly could treat her like she was not his husband or his wife. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, here's verse 14. I wanted to just see where it changes. She will pursue her lovers, but she will not overtake them. She will seek them, but will not find them. Then she will say, I will go back to my first husband, for it is better for me than now. For she does not know it was I who gave her the grain, the new wine, and the oil, and lavished all the silver and gold, which they used for Baal. Therefore, I will take back the grain at harvest time, and my new wine in its season. I will take away my wool and my flax, and given to cover her nakedness, and I will put an end to all her gaiety and feasts, and her new moons, her Sabbaths, and all her festival assemblies. I will punish her on the days for the days of Baal, when they used to offer sacrifices to them, and adorn herself with earrings and jewelry, and follow her lovers. So that she forgot me, declares the Lord. Now here's the turn. Here's verse 14. Therefore, behold, I will lure her and bring her into the wilderness and speak kindly to her. Then I will give her her vineyards there and the valley of Achor. That's where Achan was stoned to death. I don't know if you remember that. It's going to become a door of hope. So that's a play on the name again. It will come about in that day, declares the Lord, that you will call me Ishi, meaning my husband, and you will no longer call me Bali, my Lord. I think the key there is the relationship. The relationship is more of a husband than a Lord over her. Okay.
Yeah.
So could you see the change? So it talked about the punishment that God was going to do, but then God steps in at verse 14 and he's going to deliver her.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So I thought that was helpful. All right. So here, and then chapter 3, it has several really important things. He says, now go back and get Gomer. Okay. Because God still loves Israel. So he still wants him to take her back. And he bought her for 15 shekels and a homer and a half of barley. That's less than the price of a slave. So I think that's that should have, when it said 15 shekels and a homer and a half of barley, that should have just stunned us, because almost nobody was worth that little. A bride price was usually 50 shekels. A slave was usually 30. And I don't know if you remember Joseph, they got 20 for him because they gave 20, but they wanted him to take them so that they would make a profit on it. So they give 20, but they're going to hopefully get 30 for the kid. So anyway, but I think that lets you know just how bad Israel was, and that she was worth virtually nothing when God went after her.
Yeah.
So do you see the picture? Isn't it amazing?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Yeah.
So you've got this, and this has to be just like a slap in the face to Israel. They had to get this, and they had to understand here's a prophet of God who's going after a harlot. And now it's going to be explained that that's because it's us. Yeah. That had to shock them.
Yeah, I'm sure.
All right. Okay. So here's what it says in chapter 3. Then the Lord said to me, go again, love a woman who is loved by her husband, yet an adulteress. So her husband loved her, and so I'm assuming Hosea still loved Gomer. And again, that's picturing God's love for Israel still. Even as the Lord loves the sons of Israel, even though they turn to other gods and love raisin cakes. Can you believe they love raisin cakes, Tyler?
I know.
My understanding is that they used to press raisins into like a loaf and offer those to the false gods. Yeah. So even though they love raisin cakes, and it doesn't even explain it there. Yeah.
But it means some kind of worship practice, likely. Yeah.
Yeah. So I brought her for myself for 15 shekels of silver and a homer and a half of barley. A homer is about a bushel. It's a little under a bushel probably. So that gives you some clue. And barley is a lesser grain. If it was wheat, that'd even be more expensive. But barley is like a lesser grain, even
cheaper.
Yeah. And then I said to her, "Now here we need to talk about this." It says, "You will stay with me for many days. You shall not play the harlot, nor shall you have a man." When it says, "Nor shall you have a man," I assume that means that he's not going to act as a husband to her. So there's going to be a time of separation, it sounds like. "So I will be towards you. For the sons of Israel will remain for many days without king or prince, without sacrifice or sacred pillar, and without ephod or household idols." Now, I think what that's talking about is when they're going into exile. They're going to have that time when they can't offer sacrifices. They won't have a king and prince. But that's not going to be the only thing. Because look, now here's what it says. "Afterwards, the sons of Israel will return and seek the Lord their God and David their king, and they will come trembling to the Lord and to his goodness in the last days." So I think it means more than just that exile time, but that exile time is going to be the thing that turns them back to him. And again, it won't be everyone, but it'll be a remnant that we've got a righteous remnant that goes on. And it says even into the last days, at least I think that's what it's getting at. So, because they're going to return to him. And they returned in the exile, they went back to God, but it didn't last very long. And before long, they were back in their old ways. But I think what's going on is it's saying that's going to be the start of the turn that is the positive thing for them. So the exile will be the major thing that gets them started to turn back, but then there'll be a process that they head back to him.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Okay,
so restoration's more than just one step, basically.
Right. So does all that make sense? So we've got this picture of Gomer and Hosea, and then him coming back, and now here's the climax, him going back and getting her, and then he explains that as a time when they're going to be turning back to God, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's our illustration or our example. Okay. Now the rest
kind of a real life metaphor.
Yeah. No, the rest of the book is going to explain him coming back. Okay. And basically what God's going to do is more than the coming back. It's basically explaining the problem he's got with him. Like he's got the charges here. In Hosea 4, there's a case against Israel. And the problem is there's no faithfulness or kindness or knowledge of God in the land. Instead, verse 2 tells there's swearing, deception, murder, stealing, adultery, bloodshed, follows bloodshed. So it's instead of good things, all these bad things. Okay, and then verse 6 has the verdict. They played the harlot, departing from their God. Pretty clear in verse 12 it says that. And so therefore they're going to be punished. So this is basically God's case against them.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to try to do in each of these ones, I'll summarize what it is. Then we'll look at the passage to explain, have it explain it for us. So here's what it says. Listen to the word of the Lord, O sons of Israel, for the Lord has a case against the inhabitants of land, because there's no faithfulness or kindness or knowledge of God in the land. But there is swearing, deception, murder, stealing, and adultery. They employ violence so that bloodshed follows bloodshed. So that was that first part. Then the next verse is, therefore the land mourns and everyone who lives in it languishes. Yet let no one find fault and let no one offer reproof, for your people are like those who contend with the priest. Do you have any idea what that means? For your people are like those who contend with the priest.
Yeah, that sounds like who have conflict with the priest. If you're contending with the priest, right?
Yeah. Okay. So what would that mean? Do you think? How do we interpret that?
No one find fault enough.
Let me ask you this: who's the one person that they should be going to because of all their sins?
Yeah, they should be going to a priest to solve this, right?
Yeah. And instead, they're contending with him. I assume that means they're arguing with them and saying, hey, we're not wicked. Yeah. We're not doing this. So they're like people who contend with the priest. So the very person that they should be going to try to get their lives straightened out, they are fighting with them and contending with them, claiming, "Oh, we don't need this. We aren't so sinful and all that." So, which in my mind is really sad. That means the very person that they should be going to so that they could get things straightened out is the very person they're fighting against and saying, "We're not going to listen to you guys." Yeah. So isn't that sad? So, go on.
When we've seen them. Also have conflict with the prophets, though, as well, right? That's what kind of Amos. It was like no one's listening to the prophets at all. Exactly. So Amos kind of comes out of this, non-prophet-y line, Yeah, that's terrible.
Yeah. Okay. I just wanted you to see. So that means they're in such a bad predicament that the thing that could have helped them, they're going against. Yeah. Okay. Right. Now, verse 6, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Because you have rejected knowledge, I will also reject you from being my priest. Remember, Israel was supposed to be a priest to the nations. They were the go-between.
That's right.
And now he said, I've rejected you because you rejected me. Okay. Since you have forgotten the law of your God, I will forget your children. So you can see that's his case and the outcome of the case. And here he's got a little more. My people consult their wooden idols, and their diviners' wands informs them. For a spirit of harlotry has led them astray, and they have played the harlot, departing from their God. So it's getting, it's interesting that God's using that term, harlotry, to explain what they're doing, because they would have understood that. That would have made perfect sense, that they're going against, and harlotry in their minds, harlotry was really bad. So God's saying, well, you're doing this very thing to me. And I think it would have been such a good example for them.
Yeah.
All right. They offer sacrifices on the tops of mountains and burn incense on the hills, under oak, poplar, and terebinth, because their shade is pleasant. Now, remember, Israel had high places where they used to worship, and that's where they'd worship the false god. So they're saying, okay, incense on the hills, under the and usually on the top of those trees, or on the top of those hills, they had trees planted and things like that. So it made it look like these gods were making it real fertile. So that's why it's talking about, so under every pleasant tree and all that.
Right.
Okay. Therefore, your daughters play the harlot, and your brides commit adultery. So they had priestesses, for Baal, and so the logic is that they thought Baal needed help to get the fertility coming across, so they used these women and priestesses to be to help God Baal get more productive, and so. It fit right into human mentality, but notice it also says your brides commit adultery.
Right.
I'm assuming that means kind of like the rite of the first night that they had in the Crusader or in the nighttime, the time of the nights, when a king would be the most powerful, and he could then claim the first night of a person's wedding. My guess is that's possibly what was happening here. And they thought they were doing it to actually see. They were so deceived. They were thinking that would help. When their land was having drought, they were assuming that this kind of thing would help their land not have a drought anymore. So they were so deceived into thinking that. All right, it goes on. I will not punish your daughters when they play the harlot, or your brides when they commit adultery, for men themselves go apart with harlots and offer sacrifices with temple prostitutes. So the people without understanding are ruined. So he's basically saying, I'm going to let them go. At some point, God gives them over to their own wickedness. And I think that's what he's saying here. You guys are doing this, and you don't seem to want to stop. So I'm just going to give you over to it. And so that's what I think he's saying. And in verse 16, since Israel is stubborn like a stubborn heifer, can the Lord now pasture them like a lamb in a large field? I had to think about that.
The answer is no. Right?
Yeah. But I guess what it's saying is, if you have a lamb that's obedient and will come when you call and stuff like that, you can put them out in a large field, and they can eat wherever they want. So they have all the food and everything they want. Israel, you can't do that with, because they're so stubborn. Yeah.
Right.
So I had to think about what that was getting at first, but I think it makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, in chapter 5, it talks about Israel, had their only hope is to turn back to God. But the problem is, everyone is guilty. They're priests, they're kings, they're people. It says in verse 1, there's a snare at Mizpah and a net at Tabor. My guess is Mizpah and Tabor were places where they would had high places, and they were doing false worship. So it's saying that there was ways to catch the Israelites at both of those places where the false gods were worshipped. Then verse 4, their sins will not allow them to return to their God. That's a scary, scary thought. But remember, we've already talked about that. There's, I think Amos had a place where it talked about their sins were unhealable, could not be healed.
Right.
And I think what he's saying is, now the sins, they're so much into their sins that it's kept them away from their God, and they can't get back to him. Yeah. That's a scary thought.
Yeah, it is.
That lets you know that at some point sin can be so deceptive that you have no way of getting out of it. So unless God does it, there's no way of getting a person out of that sin. Yeah. Then verse 7, they have dealt treacherously with their God. That word treacherously, that is a really strong word. And it fits with that, with idolatry kind of thing that is talked about in Israel. Yeah. Like abomination, that's another word that's just about that strong. Yeah, go on.
It's interesting you have in here that the priests are also guilty.
Yeah.
Considering just like a chapter ago, we kind of saw that the people are contending with the priests, but it's probably like in Amos that there were bad prophets.
Yeah.
Like, so in one sense, you kind of can't blame the people for not, following them, but also they're still doing wrong.
Yeah.
It's like both groups are wrong. So of course they're fighting,
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. The depth of this is stunning. I think the depth of the corruption.
Yeah. Okay, and in verse 8 it says, blow a trumpet at Gibeah and a trumpet in Ramah, sound the alarm in Beth Aven. I'm assuming that Beth Aven means house of sin. I assume that's really Bethel. So I think it's a play on the words, yeah. But to blow a trumpet would mean to get their attention. Usually a trumpet was blown when war was coming. So I think what he's doing, he's trying to get their attention and tell them, it's dangerous. War's coming. You better get your waist straightened out.
Right.
And then verse 10 says, the princes of Judah are like one who moves a boundary stone. I don't know if you know that, but that's one of the worst things. Even all the laws in the ancient Near East said that there were really strict punishments for moving a boundary stone, because that was something you couldn't tell. If somebody moved a boundary stone, it's like stealing land, but it was something you couldn't hardly tell. So there was a lot of curses and stuff like that on these boundary stones, that anybody who moved them would be cursed by the gods.
Wow.
Yeah. So that tells you how bad they are.
Right.
Then verse 15 says, I will go away and return to my place until they acknowledge their guilt and seek my face. So here's God turning his back on them almost.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that lets you know how bad they are again. All right. Here's the passage that explains it now. Hear this, O priests, give heed, O house of Israel. Listen, house of the king, for the judgment applies to you. For you have a snare at Mizpah and a net spread out at Tabor. And the revelers have gone deep in depravity, but I will chasten all of them. I know Ephraim, and Israel is not hidden from me. For now, O Ephraim, you have played the harlot. Israel has defiled itself. Their deeds will not allow them to return to their God. That's that statement that I think is so serious. For a spirit of harlotry is within them, and they do not know the Lord. They will go with their flocks and herds to seek the Lord, but they will not find him. I'm assuming what that means, that they will use their flocks and herds to try to offer those to God.
Oh, yeah.
And he says, but they will not find him. He has withdrawn from them. So the idea of they're going to still offer their sacrifices, but they're still going to offer their sacrifices to the false gods too. Right, something that really makes God mad. And you can understand that. Here's a God who's protecting them and all that. And he's getting the same amount of sacrifices and worship and stuff like that as these false gods who've done nothing for them. So verse 7 says, they have dealt treacherously against the Lord, for they have bore illegitimate children. And that would be like Gomer and her false gods, like.
Right.
Okay. Verses 8 through 15 talk about everyone going to be punished. Remember, I told you that blow the horn in Gibeah and the trumpet in Ramah. Sound an alarm at Beth Aven. The princes of Judah have become like those who move boundary. On them I will pour out my wrath like water. When Ephraim saw that his sickness and Judah his wound, then Ephraim went to Assyria and went to the King Cherub. I think that means the great king, probably. But he was unable to heal you or to cure you of your wound. For you will be like a lion. I will be like a lion to Ephraim and like a young lion to the house of Judah. Even I will tear to pieces and go away. I will carry away, and there will be none to deliver. I will go away and return to my place until they acknowledge their guilt and seek my face. In their affliction, they will earnestly seek me. So the good news is that all this punishment and stuff like that is going to have a redemptive value.
Right.
They are going to turn to him, but it's going to be a long time, and it's going to be clear down the road.
In affliction.
Yeah. Chapter 6 talks about plea for repentance. God can still do. I think this is Hosea speaking, and I'll show you that in a minute. He says they've wounded. We have been wounded, but he will bandage us. He will raise us up in 3 days. God delights in loyalty and knowledge of God in verse 6, and then verse 10 is Ephraim's harlotry is there. So let me show you what we got. Come, let us return to the Lord, for he has torn us, but he will heal us. He has wounded us, but he will bandage us. So I think this is Hosea talking. So Hosea is announcing to the people to turn back to God, even though he has started the punishment. This is the good news. We can still turn back to him, because then he will heal us. And when it says he will revive us after 2 days, he will raise us up on the third day that we may live before him. I'm assuming that just means after a short time. So the 2 and 3 days, just referring to, but we see that in the New Testament, but I think, and you can go into the New Testament and see after 3 days, he did rise. So that was the healing them. Right. Yeah. But I think here it just is referring to, in a short time, God will heal us. All right. So he says, let us press on to know the Lord. His goings forth is certain as dawn, and he will come to us like rain. So he's saying it's if you would just come back to me, all this could change. Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. And then verse 11, for I delight in loyalty rather than sacrifice, and the knowledge of God rather than burnt offerings. That sounds familiar, doesn't it? Okay.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
So Hosea is, I think, picking it up from God's statement with Moses with Samuel and King Saul. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. But like Adam, they have transgressed the covenant, and they have been treacherous against me. Now, when it says like Adam, they had transgressed the covenant, I'm wondering, what covenant are we talking about? Because at that point, I don't remember seeing any kind of a covenant or anything, but clearly the word that God said to him, don't touch this and don't eat from this tree. I assume he's saying that this was an agreement or a covenant between me and Adam, but clearly the covenant that they've transgressed is clearly the law, right? Because by that time they knew everything. So they knew, God had made it clear. So, and Deuteronomy made it clear that if they did these kind of things of going after other gods, he would kick them out of the land. So that part has always been clear to them, or I would have thought. Yeah. Okay. So in verse 10, it says, the house of Israel has become a horrible thing. Ephraim's harlotry is there. Israel has defiled herself. And O Judah, there's a harvest appointed for you when I restore the fortunes of my people. So I think what he's saying is even Judah is going to get drawn away by what Israel's doing, but that there still will be a remnant of them left. Because he's still saying there's going to be a harvest or a fortune when they return to his people. Yeah. So I think that's what it's getting at. Okay, chapter 7 talks about Israel's continued rebellion. We've got Israel, Ephraim, Samaria. They're all terms for the northern kingdom. Like chapter 7, 1 and 2 says, when I would heal Israel, the iniquity of Ephraim is uncovered, and the evil deeds of Samaria, for they deal falsely. And the thief enters, bandits raid outside, and they do not consider in their hearts that I remember all their wickedness. Now their deeds are all around them, and they are before my face. That's another scary verse, if you ask me. He remembers all their wickedness. Yeah. Right. And it means he's going to punish for all that wickedness too. Yeah. And verse 3 says, with their wickedness, they make the king glad and the princes with their lives. lies. I mean, so I think it's almost funny that the princes and the kings kind of like this. They are happy that the sin. They're telling them, "Oh, don't worry, God's not going to punish us and all that." So they just continue in their sins.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Next verse. I thought it was interesting. I've got a picture here of an oven back at that time where the wind comes in and it heats those coals, and then the inside there's where in fact, this could even be an oven to melt iron and stuff like that, because irons could do that too. But some of them were just made for baking bread and stuff, but they were pretty much made the same way. But I was interested in chapter 7, how often it talks about burning or an oven or heat. It says, they are all adulterers, like an oven heated by a baker who ceases to stir up the coals from the kneading of the dough until it is leavened. So he's saying the oven goes all that time so that it can make the bread. On the day of our king, the princess became sick with the heat of wine. He stretched out his hand with scoffers, with scoffers, for their hearts are like an oven. As they approach their plotting, their evil smolders all night, and in the morning it burns like a flaming fire. That one's kind of an interesting picture. So they think about their evil deeds during the night, and then in the morning they go into full bloom and do them. Yeah. All of them are hot like an oven. They consume their rulers. All their kings have fallen. None of them calls on me. Again, you can see how bad off they are.
Yeah.
Israel's called a silly dove. So Ephraim has become like a silly dove without sense. They call to Egypt. They go to Assyria. When they go, I will spread my net over them, and I will bring them down like birds of the sky. I will chasten them in accordance with the proclamation of their assembly. Woe to them, for they have strayed from me. Destruction is theirs, and they have rebelled against me. I would redeem them, but they speak lies against me. That's back to them kind of contending against the priest kind of thing. They would, God would redeem them, but they won't even come to them. They claim that he's not going to help them,
Yeah.
So I notice it says they go to Egypt and to Assyria. So again, those were two countries they often went to get help instead of going to their God. So, yeah. So he calls them a silly dove for that. Down here, this part I thought was interesting. They turn, but not upwards. They are like a deceitful bow. Their princes will fall by the sword because of the insolence of their tongue. This will be their derision in the land of Egypt. Notice when it says they turn, but not upwards. So they don't turn to God. They turn to everything else.
They know they need help.
Yeah. Right. And then they're like a deceitful bow. Do you know what that would be like?
No, what?
But that'd be like a bow, you're shooting it, and instead of going out after the prey you're going out, it comes back and gets you. That would be a deceitful bow, is one that you couldn't control.
Right. It goes the wrong way.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I just thought that's an interesting picture.
Yeah.
All right. They've even set up false worship. Chapter 8 and 9 is very clear here. They set up kings, but not by me. They have appointed princesses, but I did not know it. So they're not calling on the right people for leadership. With their silver and gold, they've made idols for themselves, that they might be cut off. He has rejected your calf, O Samaria, saying, my anger burns against them. How long will they be incapable of innocence? For from Israel is even this, a craftsman made it, so it's not God. Surely the calf of Samaria will be broken to pieces. My guess is they had made, we already know that they had calves in Dan and Bethel. My guess is they also put them in Samaria. So God's saying, we know they're not God's because a craftsman made them. They're not like me. So anyway, it says he's going to be broken. But look at verse 7. They sow to the wind and they reap the whirlwind. I thought that was an interesting picture. So they put a little sin here, but when it comes back a whirlwind instead of just a little sin that they've sowed.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Later on in chapter 8, it says, since Ephraim has multiplied altars for sin, they have become altars of sinning for him. So meaning that they put these altars all over, and now they're getting their recompense for that.
Yeah.
Though I wrote them 10,000 precepts in my law, they have regarded them as a strange thing. For my sacrificial gifts, they sacrifice the flesh and eat it, but the Lord has taken no delight in them. Now he will remember their iniquity and punish them for their sins. They will return to Egypt. For Israel has forgotten his maker and built palaces, and Judah has multiplied fortified cities, but it will send a fire in its cities that it may consume their palatial dwellings. Now, it's interesting, he says they will return to Egypt. Remember, they're not going to return in exile to Egypt, but they're going to return to Egypt for help. So I assume that what it means, they will return to Egypt to go try to get help for them, and it's not going to help them.
Yeah.
In chapter 9, it talks about, O Israel, with exaltation like the nations, for you have played the harlot, forsaking your God. You have loved harlot's earnings on every threshing floor. Now, that's an interesting picture, too. So remember, the threshing floor is where they throw up the grain and clean it out.
Yeah.
But they must have offered sacrifices on those threshing floors, too.
Oh,
And so that's,
right.
I think, what is the harlot's earnings on those threshing floors. The threshing floor and winepress will not feed them. The new wine will fail them. They will not remain in the Lord's land, but Ephraim will return to Egypt, and in Assyria they will eat unclean food. So there he makes it clear that the northern kingdom's going off to Assyria.
Yeah.
And I've got this passage here in Deuteronomy that actually explains that if they wander into to false gods and things like that, that what's going to happen is that God is going to remove them from the land. So they should have known it from Deuteronomy, and yet they don't seem to have.
Right.
Or didn't stop them anyway.
Yeah.
And then
kind of.
Yeah, and then verses 11 through 17, there's even more punishments and more curses that he's poured out on them. Ephraim has stricken, and his root is dried up. They will bear no fruit. Even though they bear children, I will slay the precious ones of their womb. My God will cast them away because they have not listened to him, and they will be wanderers among the nation. So it makes it real clear that Israel is about as wicked as they can get. And so it's about time for God to punish them. So, you look at Hosea and it sounds terrible. But remember, they had been warned of this all the way along, and they still disobeyed. Chapter 10 says that Israel's a luxuriant plant. He produces fruit for himself. The more his fruit, the more altars he made. The richer his land, the better he made the sacred pillars. Their heart is faithless. Now they must bear their guilt. The Lord will break down their altars and destroy their sacred pillars. Surely now they will say, we have no king, for we do not revere the Lord. As for the king, what can he do for us? So I think what they're saying is they've rejected the Lord, so they've got no king that can help them, and even the Lord won't help them because they've rejected him. But verse 12 still, remember I told you that in these prophets, there's a lot of judgment, and we've just been through a lot of judgment already, haven't we? But verse 12 says it's time to seek the Lord. So in verse 12, it makes it real clear that you can still come back to me. Okay? All right. Chapter 11, you know in Hosea 11 is that passage that's quoted in the New Testament. So I want you to see it, what it's got in the Old Testament context. So chapter 11 of Hosea, it says, when Israel was a youth, I loved him, and out of Egypt I called my son. The more they called them, the more they went out from them. They kept sacrificing to Baals and burning incense to idols. Yet it is I who taught Ephraim to walk. I took them by the arms, so they did not know that I healed them. So you got to that passage is really clear that God's the one providing for Israel. Now, that one, and out of Egypt I call my son. That's out of the exile, right? When you see it in Matthew, it says, so Joseph got up and took the child and his mother while it was still night and left for Egypt. He remained there until the death of Herod. This was to fulfill what had been spoken by the Lord through the prophet, out of Egypt I called my son. So in that passage, and remember we've talked about it's because that word fulfilled means to fill up with more meaning. And so I think that's what's happening here, is the idea is being fulfilled also again. Now, that doesn't mean it wasn't fulfilled in Hosea's time. It's saying that it's being filled up now even more with Jesus being brought out of Egypt.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Okay, so that's chapter 11.
Yeah.
Chapter 12 talks about God's case for, against Israel. And basically it talks about going all the way back to even Jacob. It started with Jacob. He multiplies his lies and violence. Whoever makes a covenant with Assyria and oil is carried to Egypt. So they went both to different countries, Egypt and Assyria. The Lord has his dispute with Jacob and will punish Jacob according to his ways. So I think it's a play on the words Israel and Jacob. Okay.
Right.
He will pay him according to his deeds. In the womb, he took his brother by the heel, and in his maturity, he has contended with God. So it's saying Israel started out fighting against his brother. Now he's contending against God. It hasn't changed much.
Right.
And Ephraim said, surely I've become rich. I have found wealth for myself. In all my labors, I will they will find in me no iniquity, which would be sin. But I have been the Lord your God since the land of Egypt, and I have also spoken to the prophets, and I gave numerous visions and thought, and through the prophets I gave parables. But by a prophet the Lord brought Israel from Egypt, and by a prophet he was kept. So he's saying God's protected them all these time, even though Israel doesn't think they've sinned. God is the one who, and they've been doing it all the way through, it sounds like.
Right. Yeah.
13, when Ephraim spoke, there was trembling, and he exalted himself in Israel. But through Baal, he did wrong and died. And now they sin more and more and make for themselves molten images, idols skillfully made from their silver, all of them the work of craftsmen. They say to them, let men who sacrifice kiss the calves. Oh, and I assume that kissing the calves was a way of honoring them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Therefore, they will be like morning cloud and like dew, which soon disappears. So they're going to be punished, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Oh, look at this one. Shall I redeem them from the power of Sheol? Shall I redeem them from death? O death, where's your thorns? Or O Sheol, where's your sting? So that sounds very similar to what's said in the New Testament, isn't it?
It does, right.
Samaria will be held guilty, for she has rebelled against her God. They will fall by the sword. Their little ones will be dashed in pieces, and their pregnant women will be ripped open. So it sounds like, I'm assuming all of this was to warn them. So God's hoping that they'll listen and turn and don't want this kind of stuff, but they don't seem to listen very well.
Yeah.
Okay, we're at the last chapter. So the last chapter of Hosea is kind of now going to summarize it all, and it's going to talk about God calling them out. So verse 3 talks about only God can save us, not Assyria, not horses, not our idols, because he's been through almost all of those things. You saw through the book of Hosea, those were the things they went to try, and even Egypt, to try to get deliverance. And he's saying in verse 3, there's no way that's going to happen. Only God can save us. And the verse 5 says, I will be like the dew to Israel, like a lily, a cedar of Lebanon. Earlier, it talked about that there was not going to be any dew for them, and so that they were going to have droughts and stuff like that.
Right.
Now it says God will be that dew for Israel, and they'll be like a lily, the cedar of Lebanon. So, okay, now the very last verse in this book says this: whoever is wise, let him understand these things. Whoever is discerning, let him know them. For the ways of the Lord are right, and the righteous will walk in them, but transgressors will stumble in them. So do you see, even at the end, it's letting us know that this is like a parable, and that only the wise people will get it, and that if you're a fool, you're not going to get this at all.
Right.
So he's actually, and man, I would have thought it was pretty clear. Even that description,
Right.
I was thinking,
obvious.
yeah, how can they miss this? But
Right.
here it's saying that only the wise people would get it.
Hmm.
Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right, so that's how the book ends, and here's its the conclusions. There's clearly a message of judgment here, okay, because they've been unfaithful to God. And then Hosea is to act out this message, and that had to make an impact. I mean, here's a righteous prophet marrying a harlot. That's even more strong when you read the law and the I think it's Deuteronomy that says that a priest cannot marry anyone but a virgin, and it makes that real clear. So here's a prophet marrying a harlot, and that had to be just like the strongest way of saying, this is what you guys are like.
It's scandalous.
God is very gracious and will take back even those that severely rebel from him. If nothing else, we should get that from the book. That last chapter is just amazing. Talking about here, here's a come back to me. Even Hosea in chapter 6. Remember, he says, he's harmed us, but he will heal us. He will raise us up in 3 days. Here's that call out to help, and they still don't listen. So I'm just amazed. All right, here's our questions. Why is Gomer a good picture of Israel?
She just has no loyalty.
Okay.
Okay. And there's a kind of, her whole life is characterized by, like we say in the very beginning of the book, like by harlotry. It's characterized completely by her own consumption and her own desires, and so she's very much just like Israel. She's departed from her covenant partner.
And had she done it all the way from the beginning?
It seems like it.
That's why he brings up Jacob and stuff like that. Remember?
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah, so it makes it clear. Now, there's a big debate in Old Testament studies as to whether Gomer was a harlot before, Gomer took her, or Hosea took her, or if she became a harlot after that. Now, which one pictures Israel better?
That's a really good question. I guess it depends. Like, are you talking about just like the modern state of, or not the modern, but the then current state of Israel? Because if you think about, Israel, its whole history, you might be able to say that it's after the covenant, because how would you even know what you've done wrong? Unless you go, I guess, like, well, they go back to Adam though, I guess too, in this, don't they?
It did,
so that does kind of go back to the beginning.
Yeah. See, so I think,
I guess it would fit better.
Yeah, I think it has to be. She was a harlot right from the beginning, because even Israel was a harlot right from the beginning.
Right, right.
Good. Okay. What do we learn about God in this book?
He is gracious, but there's still punishment for sin.
Yeah.
I've been going through a lesson plan for a youth thing coming up on 2 Samuel 12. That's Nathan and David, and you get two really important things there, that the relationship between God and David is restored. David admits that what he did was wrong, but there's still incredible consequences, and the chapters after that kind of play that out, all the violence in his own household and all the, basically he's kind of convicted by his own statement regarding Nathan's story. So both those things are true. There's immense grace for David that God shows, but there's still consequences to that sin.
Yeah. And I just want to add one more thing. God kept pursuing even when Israel was wandering away. And I think that's really important too. So, okay.
Yeah.
What do we learn about Israel?
Oh, nothing good. It's very similar to what we get in the other prophets, really. There's just a constant pulling away from
Yeah.
God that they exhibit,
Yeah.
and we still exhibit.
And it's not like they didn't know, is it? Because, I mean,
Right.
they were warned, they were told, the prophets did their
Yeah.
job. Here's Hosea coming with a beautiful object lesson, and they still don't turn back to him.
Right.
Okay, here's the scary one. In what ways am I like Israel?
Yeah. Unfortunately, we're very much like Israel, and that's, I think I think it's one of the reasons we still have the Old Testament. Right? As Christians, like we don't get rid of the Old Testament. We hold the Old Testament and the New Testament, and we get, really good news in the New Testament, and we get a new context for understanding everything in the Old Testament. But the Old Testament is still incredibly valuable for us as Christians and the life of the Christian, because unfortunately we do the same thing as Israel. We depart from God all the time. We look to other people or things to satisfy us or protect us or to provide for us, and we're constantly failing in that new covenant. Even though Christ has settled that covenant, we don't live up to it.
Let me ask one more question then. Okay, so we've got this beautiful picture. What would we miss in the Bible if we didn't have the book of Hosea? So why did God put it here?
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly that pursuit is a part of it. I think one of the most moving sections in Hosea is in chapter 3, when he's like, I'm going to take her out to the wilderness and speak tenderly.
Yeah.
There's still grace in the face of great iniquity.
Yeah.
And I think what's so important for the Christian is, like, Israel is still in a kind of sacrificial system. There's means, even though we see that those means are not quite going to do it in this case, because their sin is so great, and God is less interested in, like, the actual sacrifice than the loyalty behind those and the care behind those towards God. But we do have something new. Christ has changed that for us, so there is kind of a bigger solution to that problem, but it's still important for us to know this, because we still just turn. But even though we've turned from God, God is still pursuing us.
Yeah. I think that's important.
What's your answer to that question? Is that it?
No, that's it. I think the idea of pursuing, the idea of how much we've sinned against God. I mean, Israel had to catch that. I mean, it had to be. I think part of it amazes me that God just is so willing to bend over backwards to help us to know that we're in sin and that we have the opportunity to get out of it. I think it was brilliant. I mean, the book does it in such an amazing way that if they didn't get it after that. Now remember, so let's put this in our time frame. So it's somewhere before 722. We know that for sure, because after 722, it doesn't even make any sense to have it.
Right.
But so let's say that within, I don't know, 10 to 25 years, they're going to be taken off into exile. So this does not work, even though it seems so clear to us. It seems like it was so obvious that they should have got it. They don't seem to have.
Well, yeah, and maybe it doesn't work as a warning, but it would still work as an explanation. To those in exile. How did we get here? And there is that kind of section in there. I can't remember which chapter it was in, but that, like, basically in affliction, the people will turn back. And, like, reading that when you're in affliction, I think also serves another purpose. There's an encouragement there, but also an explanation of this is not God abandoning us.
Right.
This is God bringing us back after we've abandoned him.
Yeah. And I want to add just one more thing to that, is because now they could never say, oh God, you're unfair. This book makes it real clear. that everything he had done to try to draw them back, but Israel just kept spurning him and continuing in their sin. And so it's obvious, they can never say to God, "Oh, you're unfair." He made it so clear, even years before it happened.
Yeah.
So, what do you think of the book?
It's a tough one. Yeah. This is a tough one. I think it's a very emotional one.
Yeah.
I think what's interesting going through these minor prophets is how a lot of times we talk about them as they're the same thing almost. Like there's a lot of similarities between the minor prophets, of course.
Yeah.
But the tenor and tone of them, they are very different. This is so different from Jonah.
Yeah. Yeah. Even our Amos is different than Amos, isn't it? Yeah.
Very different. Even though a lot of the messaging is similar, the warning is kind of similar. There are definitely similarities there, but the tenor and the tone of this is just vastly different. You know, this is a heartbreaker kind of to read.
Yeah. I really like the end when it says the one who has wisdom will be able to figure out what's going on, and the rest won't. It's in one sense that's a little sad, but that should make me open my eyes and say, well, do I have wisdom or don't I? Yeah.
Right.
So, the next one is Micah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
That'll
a
be
short
different one too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a short book, but it. Remember, I told you that it has the most positive take on it than any of them. It's about 50 part judgment and 50% restoration. So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah,
so
that one's
next.
Yeah.
I think we do after Hosea.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Looking forward to next week.
Okay, we'll see you.